Okay, let's set the scene. The year is 1926. We're in this bustling, kind of cramped New York City studio, and you're staring at an apparatus that is just unlike anything else. It's basically a raised wooden bed frame, and it's covered with metallic springs, leather straps, and a pulley system. And at first glance, you can absolutely see why our source material describes it as looking like a medieval torture instrument. But this thing, this complex construction of wood and springs, it was actually a complete revolution in fitness. It was designed by a man named Joseph Pilates. And today we're doing a deep dive into the surprising origins of his method, the philosophy behind it, and this very specific invention he called the reformer. We've got a great stack of sources here detailing the man, the machine, and the immediate powerful impact it had on his first clients. So our mission is to understand not just what it is, but, why it works so well.
And that why is the perfect starting point. It immediately frames our whole conversation around two key ideas: controlled resistance and inner strength. You see, the reformer, it wasn't built to just, build bulk or encourage brute force. It was designed as a tool, almost a facilitator, that forces the user into this state of intense, purposeful control. The entire machine is engineered to create this inescapable feedback loop between your mind and your muscles. If your mind wanders, believe me, the machine lets you know.
That focus on radical self-control, it brings us right back to the man himself, Joseph Pilates.
Yeah.
He's introduced in our sources as this figure of just immense self-determination. One piece describes him as having an iron will and an even sturdier physique. But the real surprise, the sort of aha moment here, is that he didn't start out that way. Not at all.
No, not even close. And what's so fascinating is that the incredible physical transformation he went through, that's what fueled his entire life's work. Records from his childhood show he was actually a really sickly boy. He was plagued by some significant limitations, severe asthma, rickets. So for him, this wasn't just about getting fit. It was a desperate, almost existential quest for health, for survival.
And he didn't just wait around for a cure. He essentially turned himself into a self-taught living laboratory. He became obsessed. Our sources say he just devoured every single anatomy book he could get his hands on. He also studied these seemingly disconnected disciplines, ancient Greek exercises on one hand, and the mental discipline of Eastern practices like yoga on the other.
Right, and he took all that knowledge from these really diverse fields and developed this incredibly rigorous self-created training program. And it fundamentally re-engineered his own body. I mean, it's the ultimate story of turning a limitation into a formidable strength. It gave him this almost spiritual belief in the body's ability to heal itself, if you just understood how it worked.
This commitment led him down some pretty strange professional paths. They almost sound like something out of a spy novel. Before he ever opened that famous New York studio, he was using his physical knowledge in really high-stakes ways. For instance, he worked as a physical trainer for Scotland Yard.
For Scotland Yard, right. Teaching officers stability and control under pressure. And then, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, he performed as a strongman in circuses. I mean, think about that combination for a second. A circus strongman who's also obsessing over clinical anatomy and subtle stabilization techniques.
It's the ultimate paradox. All that raw power, but it's rooted in this precise, almost scientific understanding of fragility and healing. The sources really sum up his motivation perfectly. It wasn't just about athleticism. His true calling was healing. It was helping other people surpass their own limitations, just like he did. And that personal drive is what pushed him to invent the machine.
Which brings us to 1926. To that New York studio and the birth of the apparatus he eventually called the reformer. When he brought his method to America, this strange apparatus became the absolute centerpiece of everything he taught.
We said it looks medieval, but let's get into the mechanics of it, because this is where the genius is. If you picture a traditional weight machine, it's usually levers or stacks of fixed weights. The reformer is completely different. The sources describe it as the construction of wood and springs, with the user lying or sitting on a sliding platform, the carriage that moves along the frame.
And the movement of that carriage is controlled entirely by a system of springs. Those springs provide the resistance. And this is the technical detail that just changes everything. His first clients, dancers, athletes, people in serious rehabilitation, they were initially very skeptical of this strange apparatus.
And why wouldn't they be? I mean, if you spent your life lifting dumbbells or doing calisthenics, why would you go lie down on a sliding bed?
That is the essential question. Why did it work so well that it converted these skeptics almost immediately? It all comes down to what we call variable and controlled resistance. When you lift a fixed weight, your muscle works hardest at one point in the movement, and then it often gets a break at another.
But the springs change that whole equation.
Precisely. The springs provide this precise and controlled resistance, but that resistance changes as you move. So the more you stretch the spring, the harder it pulls back. This forces the muscles to engage on the way out, the push, but more importantly, on the way back in. You have to control the carriage slowly and precisely back to the start.
So the real effort isn't just in the push, it's in the careful, slow return. You're constantly stabilizing.
Exactly. You're breaking the movement. And this engaged the body in fundamentally different ways. It shifted the whole focus away from brute force and toward this mindful, stabilizing execution. The machine is basically asking you, sure, you're strong enough to push this out, but are you controlled enough to bring it back slowly?
And Joseph himself was the ultimate proof of concept. Our sources have this great anecdote about him demonstrating the machine. When he got on the carriage, his body became a study of controlled movement. He wasn't just moving, he was flowing with it. And his grace, his fluidity, it masked the effort.
He was sculpting his body with every movement. He was elongating his spine while toning his deep abdominals, what he called the powerhouse. And this is where we have to shift from the nuts and bolts of the machine to the philosophy behind it. Because the reformer is just a mirror. It's reflecting how well you're applying his core principles, the 6 pillars.
Right, and we can't just list them off. Our sources stress these are not mere buzzwords. They are the entire operational doctrine. The machine forces you to integrate them.
Absolutely. Let's take the first 2 because they're completely linked. Control and concentration.
Okay, control. You have to dictate the movement. The machine can't dictate you. If the springs start shaking or slamming, you've lost control.
And that leads right into concentration. If you aren't fully present, if you're not focused entirely on the movement, you lose control. The reformer physically punishes a wandering mind. It forces you to be aware of every single muscular engagement.
That makes so much sense. It's an immediate physical feedback system. Okay, next up is centering, the powerhouse.
Right. Centering just means that every single movement, whether it's your leg or your arm, has to start from your core, your abs, lower back, hips. They all have to stabilize the trunk before your limbs even think about moving.
And that stability allows for the next principle, which is flow, or fluidity. If you're centered, the movement should be seamless.
Like water, not like a robot. Movement should transition gracefully from one to the next with no jerky stops or starts. That elegance is just a physical sign of perfect control.
Then we have precision. Why is that so important? Why can't I just move in the general direction?
Because the effectiveness of the exercise depends entirely on alignment. If your hip or knee is rotated even a tiny bit, you negate the whole point of the exercise. Precision, make sure you're using the right muscles, the deep stabilizing ones, not just the big easy ones that want to take over.
And finally, the one that so many people forget today, respiration, breathing.
The source is really clear on this. The breathing is integral to the movement. It provides internal support and helps facilitate the flow. In short, the reformer is an extension of the body, because it uses resistance to force you to embody all 6 of those principles at once.
And that deep connection is why this method is still so incredibly relevant today. We've moved from the technical side to the tangible, life-changing results. Let's show you why people cared so much then and why you should care now. Our source material has some really compelling stories from those early students.
Yeah, and look at the variety of people he was helping. Take the dancer, for example. Sidelined by an injury, which for a professional is just devastating. Through the reformer, she didn't just get her old strength back. She achieved movements that were more powerful and expressive than ever. It actually elevated her performance.
Then there's the case of the office worker, which is so relatable. This person spent years hunched over a desk, a problem that's only gotten worse since the 1920s. We see in the records his posture improved dramatically, and years of chronic, debilitating back pain just disappeared. It addressed the common ailments of a sedentary life by literally rebuilding the body's support structure.
And finally, a really powerful one that shows the holistic nature of it all. The former soldier. He was dealing with the physical and mental toll of war, and through the work, he rediscovered a sense of grounding and control he thought was gone forever. I mean, that speaks volumes. It wasn't just physical rehab, it was restoring a sense of internal structure, both mental and physical.
Joseph apparently observed all of this with what the sources call a quiet satisfaction. He knew what he had. He wasn't thinking about some niche fitness trend. He imagined a future where his method would be everywhere, offering health and vitality to people of all ages. He really believed the reformer was the key to unlocking that future.
And it's important to note, while the reformer's design did evolve, it got sleeker and more efficient, the fundamental principles never changed. The way the springs enforced that control remained exactly the same. The evolution was just about perfecting the application of those core ideas.
What's so fascinating about his vision is that it was always bigger than just building muscle. The philosophy and the machine he built to serve it was about building a better body, a better mind, a better life. The physical changes were almost a beneficial side effect of that deep, sustained mental engagement. So, what does this all mean for us today? We've traced Joseph Pilates' journey from a sickly boy to the creator of a machine that, almost 100 years later, is still revolutionizing how we think about movement.
It all comes back to that initial skepticism, followed by that immediate conversion. People saw the machine, they felt the principles being enforced by the resistance, and they got results they couldn't get anywhere else. Physical, mental, even spiritual. The genius was making the body and mind inseparable partners in every single movement.
And that brings us to our final provocative thought for you to mull over. While we often focus on the physical benefits, the toned core, the better posture, the true measure of the reformer isn't the wood or the springs, it's the principle of forced concentration. The machine demands that you be completely present, completely in control for that period of time.
So if applying that deep level of focused concentration for, say, an hour can fundamentally restructure your physical body and get rid of chronic pain, imagine this. How much more effective could our other efforts be? Our difficult projects at work, our challenging conversations, our attempts to learn something new, if we applied that same intense level of deep control and focused intention to them. Joseph Pilates designed a machine to build a better body, but in doing so, he left us a powerful lesson on how to build a more intentional and effective life.